I should have destroyed the cartridge the second I found it. Burned it, smashed it, buried the ashes so deep no one could ever dig them up. But I didn't. I thought it was just a weird little relic, some forgotten game from the past. Now, I can't walk into a dark room without feeling it watching me. And before long, I know it'll want you to. If this post vanishes, you'll know why. It won't be because I deleted it. It'll be because something doesn't want you hearing the truth. And if that happens, if my words are swallowed up or replaced, you'll know everything I'm saying was real. People always think stories like this are fake. Creepypasta, internet campfire tales, cheap thrills for bored insomniacs. I used to think that too, until I held that game in my hands. Until I heard the voices bleeding out from the speakers long after the console was unplugged. Until the shadows in my room began moving in ways they shouldn't, syncing with the distorted animations on the screen. I wish I could tell you this is just paranoia, that I've lost sleep and gone crazy. But it's more than that. The cartridge isn't just plastic and silicon. It's a trap, a doorway, maybe even a parasite. Whatever's inside it doesn't want to be alone. And now, it's followed me home. I don't know how much time I have before it decides you've heard enough. So listen carefully. Every detail matters. Every glitch, every strange sound, every sick little twist burned into the pixels. It was all a warning. And I ignored them. I'm not posting this for attention. I'm posting this because if I disappear, if you suddenly stop seeing uploads from me, you'll know where to start looking. Or maybe you'll be smart enough not to. This isn't just a story about a haunted cartridge. It's about the mistake I made. The mistake you might be tempted to repeat. Because once you see it, once you load it up even once, it's already too late. So, if you're still here, if you're still listening, let me take you back to the night it all began. Most people collect Pokemon cards. I collect bad decisions. That's how I usually explain my obsession with retro games. Some people find peace in yoga, meditation, or herbal tea. Me? I spend my nights combing through dusty flea markets, sketchy online forums, and auction sites where half the listings look like they're one click away from a phishing scam. I tell myself it's about the nostalgia, reliving the simpler days of blowing into cartridges and begging the console to work. But the truth? I like chasing that feeling of stumbling onto something rare, something no one else has. And, like any bad habit, it usually starts late at night. Picture it. I'm slouched in front of my monitor, headphones half on. YouTube autoplay dragging me through a black hole of top 10 forgotten consoles videos. It's past midnight. I've got a bowl of stale cereal balanced on the desk, and I'm scrolling through a retro gaming forum that probably hasn't updated its interface since 2004. Half the posts are people flexing their sealed copies of Zelda. The other half are lonely dudes arguing about which version of Sonic counts. That's my comfort zone. Harmless, stupid, nostalgic. Every once in a while, I even score something cool. A busted Game Boy I fixed up with a new screen. A box of SNES cartridges that smelled like someone's attic but worked fine. Harmless treasure hunting. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back, the seller's smile should have told me everything. That day, I was wandering a flea market that stretched across an old parking lot. Half the booths were just cardboard boxes filled with tangled wires, kitchen junk, and cracked DVDs. But there was one table, a little too neat, a little too deliberate. Stacks of cartridges lined up perfectly, no dust, no stickers peeling. And behind it, a man who looked like he'd stepped straight out of an uncanny valley simulator. Too wide grin, eyes that didn't quite blink in sync. Like he was rehearsing normal human mannerisms. I almost walked past. Almost. But then I saw it. Buried between the colorful chaos of Mario and Kirby and Donkey Kong was a cartridge with no label at all. Just matte black plastic, a faint scratch across the surface like something had tried to claw its way out. I picked it up without thinking. That's the rule of flea markets. If it looks out of place, you look closer. The man's smile widened, just barely, but enough for my stomach to do a little flip. Special one, that, he said. His voice was too smooth, like he'd been waiting to use that line. Not for everyone. I should have set it down. I should have laughed, said, "Nah, I'll stick with Mario Kart." But of course I didn't. Because that's me, professional collector of bad decisions. And that's how I ended up walking out with the one cartridge I should have left behind. The thing about these kinds of finds is that they follow you. I didn't just stumble into it once at the flea market. No, somehow, it followed me home, like a shadow you don't notice until the lights go out. I remember the night it happened. My usual routine. Bowl of cereal, browser tabs multiplying like cockroaches, that itchy restlessness that only online hunting can scratch. I wasn't even looking for anything specific, just bouncing between old message boards where threads never die, they just rot in place. That's when I saw it. Buried 3 pages deep in a forum I hadn't visited in years was a post with the title, "Unreleased Build, Private Sale, Serious Collectors Only." No fancy graphics, no flair. Just blocky white text on a black background, like the guy wanted it invisible to casual eyes. The description was short, clipped, almost official. Prototype cartridge. Not for distribution. For testing purposes only. Handle with care. Not all features stable. Contact privately. Limited availability. The listing had only been up for 15 minutes, and already there were comments piling in. Some were the usual trolls. LOL virus cartridge. You're gonna get haunted, but buried between the noise were more serious warnings. Don't touch this. I've seen it before. It won't stay up long. He's selling again? Thought they shut him down. If you know, you know. Walk away. Walk away. That was the smart option. That was the option a normal person would have chosen. Instead, I told myself the same lie every collector tells when they're about to do something stupid. This might be the only chance I get. The seller's profile was practically a ghost. No avatar, no bio, no posting history. Just a string of numbers as a username, like an auto-generated bot. And yet, when I messaged him, he replied instantly, like he'd been waiting. Interested in the cartridge? No hello, no small talk. I typed back, depends. Which build is it? Seconds later, not listed anywhere else. Unfinished. It was for internal tests. My pulse jumped. Internal test builds were the holy grail of collecting. They weren't meant for players, weren't even meant for the public. They were rough, experimental, half-broken glimpses into what could have been. I'd read stories of unreleased features, secret levels, even mechanics that never made it into the final games. Stuff buried so deep only developers knew it existed. This was exactly the kind of thing that could make a collector's reputation. Of course, that wasn't the only thought in my head. The other part of me, the rational part, was whispering about how off this felt. The seller's clipped replies. The way other users warned me off. The fact that the post itself already looked unstable. By the time I refreshed the page a third time, it was gone. Deleted. Like it had never existed. But the message thread remained. Do you want it or not? The seller pressed. That's the thing about temptation. It's never about logic, never about what makes sense. It's about that gnawing hunger that convinces you you'll regret saying no more than you'll regret. Saying no more than you'll regret saying yes. I said yes. We arranged the details, PayPal, friends, and family, of course, a shipping address I probably shouldn't have trusted him with, and a delivery window that was far too specific. You'll have it by Friday. Not if, not around then. Just a guarantee, like he knew exactly how this would play out. When the package arrived, it was wrapped too carefully. Layers of bubble wrap, electrical tape, and finally a plain, nondescript box. Inside was the cartridge. The same matte black casing I'd seen before, unmarked, anonymous. Except now, up close, I noticed something new. Along the seam of the plastic were faint etchings. Not letters, not numbers, more like scratches or symbols, jagged lines that caught the light when tilted. I brushed it off. Probably wear and tear. That's what I told myself. But here's the part one can't shake. The cartridge was warm. Not like left in the sun, warm, but as if it had been running, like it had a heartbeat. I should have set it aside. I should have walked away. But of course I didn't. Because when you're staring at something forbidden, something not meant for you, there's no such thing as restraint. There's only the next step. So I did what anyone like me would do. I plugged it in. The cartridge slid into place with a stiff click, like it didn't quite belong in the console. When I pressed the power button, I half expected nothing to happen, that maybe I'd been ripped off for once instead of cursed. But the screen didn't stay black. Instead, the boot up was clumsy, like watching a VHS with a warped tape. The logo didn't load properly. It flickered, cut out, reappeared stretched and discolored, as if the console was straining just to recognize it. But the screen didn't stay black. Instead, the boot up was clumsy, like watching a VHS with a warped tape. The logo didn't load properly. It flickered, cut out, reappeared stretched and discolored, as if the console was straining just to recognize it. Then came the music. Calling it music feels generous. It started like the typical chiptune opening you'd expect, but half the notes were off-key, dragged out just a little too long. One moment it sounded nostalgic, the next it slipped into something mournful, almost like it was aware of itself. The title screen finally blinked into existence. Except there wasn't a title. Just a flat background of static gray and a prompt at the bottom. Press start. That was it. No logo, no copyright, no date. Just those two words pulsing in time with the distorted soundtrack. I pressed start. The game opened with what looked like a familiar overworld map, blocky grass textures, looping background trees. The kind of generic starter zone you'd see in half the RPGs from that era. At first, I actually laughed. After all that build-up, all the paranoia, this was what I'd paid for. A buggy demo? Still, there were details. Tiny things. The sprites looked almost right, but their proportions were slightly off. Heads too large, limbs bent at angles that didn't quite fit. Shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should, like the characters were standing under a sun that wasn't there. And then there were the NPCs. I walked up to the first one, expecting the usual filler dialogue. Instead, the text box filled with jittery letters that rearranged themselves mid-sentence. Do you remember me? I paused. Odd, but not terrifying. Maybe just some edgy Easter egg the developers had thrown in. Another NPC shuffled by. I pressed the interaction button. You left us here. Okay, weird. Creepy, sure. But I'd seen worse in hacked ROMs. I convinced myself it was all part of the gimmick. But then the dialogue shifted tone. The next character didn't say anything at first. The text box appeared empty. Then slowly, letter by letter, it filled. Your name is my actual first name. I froze. That wasn't possible. I hadn't entered anything. There wasn't even a character creation screen. Yet somehow the game knew. My pulse hammered in my ears. But I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the seller had pulled my name from the account info when I messaged him. Maybe it was hard-coded into this version of the game just to screw with buyers like me. It was unsettling, but it was explainable. Or so I kept insisting. I pressed on, moving through the blocky terrain. The music shifted again. What started as a cheerful overworld theme slowly degraded into something hollow. Notes bent downward, instruments fading out until only a low hum remained, vibrating like it came from somewhere behind the walls of my room. I kept encountering NPCs, and their dialogue grew stranger. Some repeated fragmented sentences over and over. We're still waiting. You can't keep looking away. It hurts here. One character even called me by a nickname only my closest friends used. The kind of thing I'd never typed online, never shared anywhere. The worst part? When I tried to walk away, some of the sprites didn't stay put. They followed me. Not like program party members. Not in any coded, orderly way. They drifted across the screen, sliding after me with jittery frames, ignoring the map's boundaries. I laughed nervously. Okay, so this is creepy, but it's still just code. Just some broken mechanics. I kept saying that aloud, as if the sound of my own voice would tether me to something rational. Then I entered what looked like a house on the edge of the map. The interior loaded in half glitches, the furniture flickering, the walls dissolving into static. At the center of the room was a TV sprite, sitting dark. I pressed the interaction button. The screen flickered. For a split second, I wasn't looking at pixel art anymore. I was staring at an image, low-res but unmistakably real. It was my living room. My couch, my coffee table, the mess of empty cans I hadn't thrown out. And sitting on the couch was a shadow that was only there for a second before the game snapped back to its sprites, as though nothing had happened. But I knew what I saw. My stomach turned cold. I backed out of the house, back onto the overworld map. More NPCs were waiting now, clustered together at the entrance. Their dialogue boxes appeared one after the other, overlapping until they stacked across the screen like a chat log. Except it wasn't game text anymore. It was chat. Lines of text that read like they were pulled straight from a live stream feed. Why did you start it? We told you not to play. He's watching now. And then the last message appeared, alone, pulsing in that same dreadful rhythm as the title screen. Stop pretending. We see you. That was when the controller slipped from my hands. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. I told myself I was overreacting, that I'd been primed for this, that the warnings on the forum had gotten into my head. It was all just creepy coding, right? Nothing more. So I forced a laugh, picked up the controller, and told myself it was just a game. Just a game. At least, until the game said my full name, first, middle, and last. And this time, it wasn't text. It was a voice. The first time I heard the voice, I almost convinced myself it was still part of the soundtrack, a garbled audio file, some messed up sample buried in the cartridge. But then it spoke again. You, in the black hoodie. Don't look behind you. I froze. My mouth went dry. I was wearing a black hoodie. I hadn't posted about it. I hadn't typed it anywhere. The game knew. I sat there, controller in hand, suddenly hyper-aware of the weight of the fabric on my shoulders, the way the sleeves hung over my hands. My eyes flicked to the corner of the room, to the shadows that stretched longer than they should have. I didn't look behind me, couldn't, but my body felt pinned, like something was perched just out of sight. On the screen, the main sprite, my character, was no longer standing in the overworld. The terrain had shifted. My avatar was inside what looked like a crudely pixelated version of my room. The TV, the couch, even the pattern of clutter on the floor, it was all there, rendered in 16-bit mockery. And the avatar was wearing a hoodie. Black, just like mine. I told myself this was impossible, that it was just a coincidence, a trick. But as I watched, the little pixel me turned its head. Slowly, as if looking right back at me through the screen. The dialogue box opened again. Why are you pretending this isn't real? I gripped the controller tighter, my palms slick with sweat. My brain screamed at me to turn the console off, to rip the cartridge out and smash it, but I couldn't. My fingers wouldn't move. Another dialogue box appeared. Stay? See the end. Then another, overlapping it. No. Leave. You're not ready. More boxes flooded the screen, scrolling faster than I could read. It's too late. We're waiting. Don't stop now. He's here. The words overlapped, stacking like a chatroom feed mid-meltdown. Some of them begged me to quit. Others demanded I continue. It felt less like a game and more like something watching me argue with itself. I swallowed hard and said out loud, "It's just code. Just code." But the second the words left my mouth, the TV screen flickered like the game had heard me. And then the avatar on screen, my pixel doppelganger, spoke back. No, it's not. I felt my stomach twist. The environment around the sprite glitched. The walls stretched, tore, then reformed. The digital version of my room distorted into something jagged and hostile. The couch warped into a pulsing black mass. The floor tiles cracked, revealing static underneath, like the world beneath the pixels had rotted away. The music, or whatever it was, shifted again. A low, distorted hum, like someone breathing through blown-out speakers. I tried pressing buttons, desperate to make the sprite move, but the controls didn't respond. The avatar just stood there, staring at me with its blank pixel eyes. Then, suddenly, It moved without me. The sprite turned toward the in-game door. It walked forward, step by stiff step, and the screen cut to black. For a moment, I thought the console had crashed. But then the black screen filled with text, stark white. "We know where you live." I jolted back, pulse thundering in my ears. The text glitched, reappeared with new words. "We know what you're afraid of." Then again, "We're in the walls." I slammed the controller on the desk, but my hands still hovered near it. Some awful part of me wanted to keep going. Like whatever this thing was had sunk hooks into my curiosity, twisting it into something compulsive. I could have powered the console off. I could have ripped the cartridge out right then, but I didn't. Instead, I whispered, pathetic, almost pleading, "What happens if I don't?" The screen answered, "Then you'll never know the end." Another part of me, the sane part, wanted to walk away. But the rest of me, the greedy part, the part that craves forbidden knowledge, wouldn't let go. The game resumed. Except now it wasn't levels, or maps, or towns. The screen was nothing but corridors. Endless, repeating corridors of flickering tiles. The walls pulsed with red lines like veins. Shapes moved in the background, always just out of sight. And then, for the first time, my avatar held a weapon. I hadn't picked it up. I hadn't pressed anything. But there it was, a jagged blade clutched in the sprite's hand. The music was gone now, replaced by a faint static hiss, broken only by a sharp tick every few seconds, like a clock counting down. The next dialogue box appeared. "It won't let you quit." Another followed immediately after. "Not until you've seen everything." And then another. "Not until it's seen you." That was when I realized the game wasn't just showing me things. It was recording me. I couldn't shake the feeling that every hesitation, every twitch of fear, every ragged breath was being logged somewhere. That something on the other side of the code was watching me, waiting for me to break. And in that moment, I knew, whatever I'd started, I couldn't undo it. I used to laugh at horror games for overdoing the immersion gimmicks. You know, when the screen flickers or the controller vibrates, and you're supposed to pretend it's scary. But this wasn't just immersion. This was leakage. The static that hissed from the TV started spilling into the room. Not just sound, but texture. The air itself fuzzed, like heat waves bending reality. My eyes burned if I stared too long. I rubbed at them, but the static clung to the corners of my vision like afterimages. Then came the voices. At first, I thought it was more background noise, distorted audio files baked into the cartridge. But the longer I listened, the clearer they became. Muted, warped, like someone pressing their mouth against the back of the speaker, whispering directly into the circuitry. "He doesn't know yet. Don't tell him. He'll see." I stumbled back from the TV, but the voices followed, spilling from the speakers on my desk, from my phone, even though it was off. The whole room hummed with overlapping whispers. On screen, the corridors stretched endlessly. My avatar trudged forward, blade in hand, until the walls began breathing. The red veins pulsed in rhythm with my own heartbeat, and I swear I felt the air in the room sink to it, exhaling when the walls exhaled, inhaling when they inhaled. And then the NPCs returned. I didn't even realize there were NPCs in these endless halls until one of them emerged, pale, blocky, glitching in and out like corrupted data. Its dialogue box stuttered before settling. "Don't go to sleep tonight." I froze. The words pulsed on the screen. Another NPC appeared beside it, taller, its sprite stretched wrong, head flickering and unnatural. "Angles. The fire hasn't started yet, but it will." I felt my stomach clench. The language, it wasn't describing the game. It was talking about me. The next dialogue came like a gut punch. "The phone will ring at 3:17 a.m. Don't answer it." I dropped the controller. My eyes darted around the room, expecting something, anything, to confirm this was a joke, some elaborate ARG gimmick. But there was nothing except the sound of my own ragged breathing and the low hum of static swallowing the silence. The sprites glitched harder, limbs distorting, faces flickering between pixelated smiles and raw, screaming static. Their mouths didn't even move with the dialogue anymore. The text just appeared, faster than I could read. Rule 1. Don't look away from the screen. Rule 2. Never pause the game. Rule 3. You can't turn it off now. The rules burned themselves into my brain before I realized I was memorizing them. My light bulb flickered overhead. Just a tiny stutter, but I noticed. And then it flickered again, in perfect time with the sprite's movements. The timing wasn't random. It was synced. I whispered to myself, coincidence. And the nearest NPC snapped its head toward me. Toward me, not the avatar, and its text box slammed onto the screen in jagged, oversized letters. Not coincidence. The TV popped, the static surged, and the shadows in my room shifted. Then the avatar moved without me again. It raised the blade, and a door appeared at the end of the corridor. The door wasn't pixel art. It was photorealistic, grainy, but undeniably real. My real bedroom door, down to the dent near the handle. The sprite walked to it, blade raised. And at that exact moment, my actual door creaked. I spun in my chair so fast it nearly toppled. Nothing there. Just the door, still closed, silent. But when I turned back, the sprite was gone. The screen showed only my pixelated room again, but this time there was another figure inside it. A figure hunched in the corner, face turned away, twitching like corrupted data. My lights cut out. Pitch black. The only glow was from the TV. I reached blindly for my desk lamp, but before I touched it, the TV spoke. Not dialogue boxes. Spoken words. A dry, rasping voice, like it was clawing its way through shredded speakers. Rule 4. Don't try to leave. The figure in the corner of the pixel room stood up. Its limbs bent at wrong angles, joints cracking. Slowly, it turned to face my avatar. But even though its face was pixelated, I knew what it was looking at. Me. The avatar stepped back. The screen glitched violently. For a second, I swore I saw my own reflection inside the TV, not just the reflection of the screen, but me inside it, trapped, flickering between frames. And then came the violence. The sprite lunged forward, blade swinging, carving into the warped NPC. But instead of pixel blood, the lights in my actual room exploded in sparks. The air stank of burnt plastic. My desk trembled. Something fell off my shelf. Every attack on screen echoed into reality. Every swing of the blade made the room shudder, as though the game had infected the very air around me. The whispers returned, now shouting, overlapping in agony and laughter. Don't stop. You're breaking it. It's breaking you. I tried to cover my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't in the room, it was inside my head. The sprite's blade got stuck mid-swing. The screen froze on the image of the mangled NPC, its face splitting into symbols I didn't understand. The entire TV vibrated, shaking on its stand, and then a final message appeared across the blackness. You're inside the broadcast now. I staggered back. The words burned into my mind. Because as I stared into that void, I realized something horrible. I couldn't tell which side of the screen I was on anymore. That's when I saw my own room on the screen. Not a similar room, or some uncanny copy. No, this was my room, down to the exact stack of retro game cases on my shelf. Scuffed corner of my desk, even the empty soda can I'd forgotten to throw away. All rendered in blocky, 16-bit clarity. And standing in the middle of that pixelated room was me. The avatar didn't look like the generic sprite I'd been controlling before. No, this one wore my hoodie, my jeans, even the little tear on the sleeve I kept forgetting to sew. It didn't just look like me, it moved like me. When I tilted my head, it tilted. When I breathed, its shoulders rose and fell in perfect sync. I dropped the controller, thinking that would break the connection. But my pixel double didn't stop. It kept copying me, even when my hands weren't touching a single button. The voice came back, deep and jagged, leaking through the speakers like broken glass scraping metal. Final level unlocked. You. I whispered, no, without realizing it. And the sprite on the screen mouthed the exact same word. Perfectly timed. The air grew colder. Not drafty window cold, but bone-deep, metallic cold, like the kind you feel in hospital freezers. My breath fogged in the dim glow of the TV. The whispers rose again, but this time they weren't just coming from the speakers. They seeped out from the corners of my room, from the closet, from under the bed, from the dark seams in the ceiling. Dozens of voices, all speaking through the cartridge. He's ready. He's chosen. Don't let him leave. The sprite's eyes glitched. For a second, the pixels rearranged themselves into raw, jagged letters spelling out my full name. Not the username I used online. Not the fake ones I'd given to sellers. My real name. I staggered back, pulse pounding. My foot hit the wall outlet, and I had one panicked thought. Unplug it. Rip the cord out. End it. But the TV only laughed, a sharp, synthetic burst that rattled my teeth. The screen zoomed in on the pixel room, the camera tightening until I could see every jagged detail of my sprite's face. And then the walls of the room, my room, started bleeding into the game. At first, it was just textures shifting. The wallpaper pattern warped into code. The carpet melted into an endless void of black tiles. Then it escalated. The shadows in the corners of my real room began to pixelate. I rubbed my eyes, but the effect stayed. Reality itself was glitching, breaking apart frame by frame. I grabbed my phone to record, to prove I wasn't hallucinating. But when I opened the camera app, it didn't show my room. The screen displayed the same pixelated version on my TV, complete with my sprite twitching in sync with me. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Then a new sound broke through. Not whispers this time, but typing. Fast, furious typing, as if 100 keyboards were clattering at once. I glanced back at the TV. The screen showed a flood of text scrolling too quickly to read, lines of chat stacked on top of each other. I recognized fragments, usernames, comments, panicked posts. It was a forum thread, a retro gaming forum. Dozens of users typing at once. Did anyone else get the cartridge? Stop playing. It's not just a game. They're erasing us. If I disappear, don't look for me. One by one, the usernames winked out, their text collapsing into static. The entire thread shrank line by line until only one post remained at the bottom. My username. And under it, a single message I hadn't typed. He's next. The cold in the room thickened until my fingers went numb. I couldn't feel my hands anymore, couldn't even steady my breathing. The sprite on screen mimicked me perfectly, every tremor, every panicked glance, even the way I bit my lip until it bled. Then it broke the script. Instead of copying me, it slowly turned toward the TV screen itself. Toward me, its head cocked unnaturally, cracking sideways at an impossible angle. And then it raised its hand, not waving, not pointing, knocking. 3 deliberate knocks, loud and hollow, echoing from inside the glass of the TV. And on the third knock, my actual front door rattled. I froze. My mind screamed to move, to hide, to do anything, but my body locked up. The sprite smiled, pixels splitting unnaturally wide. The TV flickered, and for a fraction of a second, the face on screen wasn't a sprite anymore. It was my face, warped and stretched into something predatory. I snapped. I lunged for the power button on the TV, slamming it off. The room fell into black silence. No static. No whispers. Nothing. I collapsed back into my chair, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. Relief hit me like a wave, hot and dizzying. And then the power went out. Not just the TV. The entire apartment. The hum of the fridge in the kitchen. The street light glow through the blinds. My phone charging on the desk. Gone. I sat in the suffocating dark, heart hammering. For a full 30 seconds, nothing moved. No sound. No flicker of light. Just silence, so heavy it felt alive. Then, from across the room, in the pitch black, the cartridge clicked inside the console. Like it was loading. I couldn't see the screen, but I felt it, that same glow pressing against me, even in the dark. And then, in a voice I swear came from inside the walls. Final level complete. When the power finally returned, it wasn't gradual. No slow hum of the fridge coming back to life. No flickering of the lights warming up. Everything just snapped on at once, like reality itself had rebooted. I sat there in the glow of the screen, drenched in sweat, my pulse hammering against my skull. The console was silent. The TV displayed nothing but a calm, blue input screen, like none of it had ever happened. For a few moments, I tried to convince myself it was just a nightmare born of too much caffeine and nostalgia. But then I noticed the controller was still warm in my hands. Too warm, like it had been clutched for hours. And the clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m. The last time I checked, it was barely past midnight. 3 hours. Gone. I staggered to my desk and opened my laptop, desperate to anchor myself in something normal. Except the files weren't normal. A handful of my folders, school essays, saved memes, random downloads, had corrupted. Their names were scrambled with strings of numbers, some replaced entirely with words I didn't recognize. One in particular stood out. A file titled rules.txt. I never created it. When I tried to open it, the text editor stuttered for a second before spitting out a wall of gibberish. Buried in the chaos, though, were sentences I could read. Do not let the cartridge touch water. Never play more than once in a 24-hour cycle. If it speaks your name, you are marked. That last one made my stomach lurch. Because the game hadn't just spoken my name, it had worn it like a mask. I slammed the laptop shut, but the paranoia didn't fade. Every sound in the apartment turned suspicious, the hiss of the radiator, the ticking of the pipes, even the buzz of my phone charger. My ears strained for voices in every crackle of static. And sometimes, I swear I heard them. Little murmurs, quick phrases buried in the noise. Play again. Don't stop now. We're not finished. I should have destroyed the thing right then, burned the cartridge, smashed the console, something. But here's the problem. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Not out of fear, not exactly. Out of pull. Like it wasn't finished with me. And maybe I wasn't finished with it, either. When I finally worked up the nerve to search online, I expected to find forums exploding with the same panic I'd seen before. Threads documenting similar glitches, horror stories from other unlucky collectors, maybe even someone who could tell me what the hell I was dealing with. Instead, nothing. The threads I'd read hours before were gone. Not just deleted, wiped. Like they'd never existed. Even cached versions were empty. And some of the usernames I remembered seeing, when I clicked on their profiles, I got error pages. User does not exist. Almost like they'd been erased along with the posts. I thought maybe I was losing it, until I stumbled across a tiny corner of the internet, a dead blog buried under layers of archive links. The formatting was broken, the images corrupted, but one entry was still legible. It described a cartridge, an unfinished build from an anonymous developer who vanished in the late 90s. According to the post, every few years the game resurfaced, passed around at flea markets, hidden in job lots, or posted briefly online before disappearing again. The writer claimed to have played it once, and they ended their post with a single line. If you're reading this, the cartridge has chosen another host. I wish I could laugh it off. Really, I do. But part of me believes it. Because if that blog is right, I'm not the first. And I won't be the last. So yeah, most people collect Pokemon cards. I collect bad decisions, and apparently, haunted hardware. And trust me, this is one collection you don't want to start. If you've stayed with me this far, then maybe you're braver than me. Or maybe you're just stupid. Either way, I need you to listen carefully, because what I'm about to say might not be here tomorrow. They always vanish. The posts, the videos, the screenshots. I've watched them go down one by one, deleted or archived, as if someone's scrubbing the evidence. So before this disappears, I'm telling you, write it down, screenshot it, share it. Don't just lurk. Don't just consume. Leave something behind. Because that's the rule of this thing. The more people talk about it, the longer it stays. But the second the chatter dies, the cartridge chooses its next host. You want proof? Fine. Here's your test. Open a new tab. Search the phrase PX91 cartridge. If it's still online, if even one file or one thread comes up, then congratulations, you've already been marked. That name isn't random. I never said it out loud before now, not in full. I kept it buried because the more you repeat it, the closer it gets. It's like a sonar ping, and every search is another echo calling it back. So don't take my word for it. Go check. I dare you. And when you find it, don't be surprised if your results vanish an hour later, or your tabs close by themselves, or your cursor drags across the screen without your hand touching the mouse. That's how it begins. Some of you listening right now already know exactly what I'm talking about. You've seen the distorted screenshots. You've read those half-finished Reddit posts. You've clicked links that 4-0 for D the next day. If you've ever downloaded a ROM with missing metadata, if you've ever booted a game that greeted you by name, say something in the comments. I'm not joking. Post what you know. Because once it decides you're worth playing with, silence won't save you. Only noise does. That's why I'm talking to you. Why I'm risking this at all. Because if I go quiet, if my account goes dark, if you never hear from me again, you'll know what happened. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be the next one writing this story. So here's my last piece of advice. Don't play it. Don't download it. Don't even think about digging for it after midnight. Because when you do, it'll hear you. Wait, do you hear that? That chime. I told myself I was done. I told myself I'd never touch that cartridge again. But promises don't mean much when the thing you're swearing off doesn't belong to you in the first place. The night after I found that cursed blog, I tried to sleep. I really did. I shoved the console into the back of my closet, buried under sweaters and an old pair of sneakers, like I could suffocate it with cotton and dust. I left the TV unplugged, the controller shoved in a drawer. I even stacked books against the closet door, as if I was sealing up a tomb. But around 2 a.m., the hum started. It was faint at first, a low, electric purr seeping from behind the closet door. A moth circling its own funeral pyre. The screen wasn't showing the home menu. It wasn't even showing static. It was showing me. Not a reflection exactly, not like glass. More like a warped, pixelated parody of my room. The angle was the same as where I stood, but my face on the screen was wrong. Too still, too stiff, like the sprite of a character idling in place. And then, the figure blinked. I didn't. A line of text crawled across the bottom of the screen, glitching as if typed by some invisible hand. Welcome back. I staggered backward, slamming into the wall, trying to convince myself I was still dreaming. But the sound, that hollow, 16-bit ding, rang out. The sound the game always made when a level began. And on the screen, my pixelated double turned. Slowly, directly toward me. I swear the smile didn't belong to me. I don't know how long I stood frozen, staring at it, before the words flickered again. Level 1 you. My throat locked. My hands wouldn't move. The only thing I could do was watch as my reflection stepped forward, pressing closer to the inside of the screen. I thought maybe it would stop there. Maybe it would freeze. But then the final line appeared. Sharp, clean, impossible to misread. The cartridge just booted again. And this time, the figure raised its hand. My hand stayed limp at my side. It's playing me.